when brands leverage that data, I feel that we can amplify the value that you get back as a user.
I'm thrilled today to have our guest, Mayur Gupta, here today on the podcast. Mayur joins us from Kraken, where he currently serves as their CMO. Mayur, welcome to the show. Maybe you can say hi to our listeners.
Thanks, Jason. Glad to be back on the podcast, and thank you for having me.
Great. I've known Mayur for many years. He was previously a customer when he was CMO at Freshly, and then went on to Gannett and USA Today, and has now ventured into the crypto world. We've had many very sort of thoughtful, philosophical, and technical conversations over the years. And Mayur joins a very elite crew of folks who have been on the podcast twice. Yes, this is Mayur's second appearance. The last was really around sort of more fundamental issues regarding how do you actually affect cross-team collaboration across data and marketing. Because Mayur, as some of you who listen to the podcast may remember, while is now a tremendously successful CMO, had his beginnings of his career as a software engineer and working on databases. So really has sort of come the full spectrum. And obviously my background is on the data side, and have learned a tremendous amount around marketing, MarTech over the last 7-8 years building Simon Data, but we always have a ton to talk about. Today we have a very exciting topic, and our big question today really revolves around crypto. And I'm sure many listeners will be asking, what does data have to do with crypto, and why do we even care about marketing with crypto? But at the end of the day, there's some foundational questions, around education, around really helping to define how to define a brand in a very fast, evolving, hot, but ambiguous space. And then we'll sort of bring that back into CRM, and sort of come full circle around and touch on some of the topics we talked about last time. But Mayur, maybe we can just begin at the top here. Tell our listeners, a little bit about Kraken, product and business, and then maybe just talk about crypto more broadly and how you think about your role as a CMO of a fast-growing and prominent crypto business.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Jason. And again, glad to be here. First of all, about Kraken, we are one of the largest and also the oldest centralized exchanges in the world. We've been around pretty much since the beginning of Bitcoin and crypto in general. We just celebrated our 11th year. Interestingly enough, like many great product-led companies, the growth for us in the first decade has come in the absence of any scale marketing. So marketing is still a baby in Kraken's journey, but we've had tremendous success and growth from the backing of a fantastic product that we built first and foremost for professional and advanced traders, and then a few years back we evolved into more retail consumers. So it's been a fascinating journey. Last 6 months we ventured now from an exchange to an NFT marketplace, and have a lot of product innovation and product roadmap down the line, diversifying beyond just the exchange. As a CMO of an incredible product and brand like Kraken, I think the challenge and the opportunity is pretty fantastic, I think, for any marketer in crypto today, because you're kind of hustling on two fronts. On one hand, you are trying to build your brand, you're trying to be honest and authentic and differentiate yourself. But at the same time, in fact, even before that, you're trying to build the category, because in many ways, the category still doesn't exist fully. There are around 250 million users around the world, but there are probably 6 billion online shoppers, which means that there's a lot of demand that still has to be created, but not through pure inspiration, not through great solutions, but rather an education and understanding of what problem crypto and blockchain really intends to solve, and education on what exactly is missing for the last 100 years in the core foundation of money. Because when I grew up, I really wasn't taught the foundation of money. As an engineer, you're taught how to connect the wires, and if you're a mechanical engineer, you're taught different things. But I never really understood the foundation of money. How does it really work? What the gaps were? But then once you start to get deeper, you really realize how broken that ecosystem really is, and the power and the opportunity that we all have in front of us with a technology like blockchain and its application with crypto. So very excited to be here. Very excited to be at Kraken. We've been through many bears and bulls, so we continue to stay focused on building some great products right now. and great user experiences.
Great. So Mayur, let's double click on this notion and challenges and opportunities around education. I'm relatively technical, and I dabble in blockchain, I dabble in crypto, have a little bit of Bitcoin, but I have friends who are very deep. And I'll hang out with them over lunch, over beers, and I'll talk with them, and they'll educate me a little bit, and then they'll talk amongst each other, and it just sounds like a different language. It's really, the complexity never ends. And at the same time, if you look at your average Kraken customer, and of course, the opportunity for Kraken and crypto across 1 billion people on the earth, in the next decade, I'd imagine I'm probably on the more technical and sophisticated realm of customers to begin with. So how do you think about that continuum? And how do you think about building the brand and positioning? And later in the conversation, we'll talk about how data can play a role in this. But at a high level, how do you think about just the different personas that you're trying to talk to?
Yeah. See, first and foremost, our thesis of marketing and building the Kraken brand has never been about trying to be the loudest voice or trying to ride, on the wave that was going on, prior to this last bear run, which is not specific to crypto. It's across the board, across the equities as well. But our focus has always been to highlight the substance of crypto, highlight the core value proposition, and not ride on the volatility. And what that means is, how can we leverage marketing to drive awareness on the use case and the application of crypto to solve those problems? And if you think about it, if you think about the analogies of other tech-led revolutions, the iPhone, even something like an Uber, when it came about, I feel that the moment you experienced that product, the focus for you as a customer shifted instantly on the value. You didn't care about the technology. Technology was hidden because the value was so visible. I think crypto is finally now at the cusp where the technology will be hidden and the value which comes out of the real life use cases will be more visible to people like you and I, or the person walking down the street. Historically, so far though, it's been the inverse. It's been all about technology, and people are still searching for, what does it solve for me? And unfortunately, with all the marketing that has happened in the category, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, it has focused more on leaning in with the solution, whereas the world is still searching for the problem. So we strongly believe that the journey for the global adoption of crypto begins with educating the world about the use cases, about the gaps that exist, and then educating on how does this technology really end up solving it. So that's been our thesis, and we haven't rushed in, but now we are ready to start to scale that and start to bring the user along. But I think the second part of your question was different cohorts. Look, I think there's no question that there are segments of users who are at different depths of their crypto understanding, or even equities trading. When you use Robinhood and E-Trade or any other platform, you have users who are day traders, you have users who are hodlers, they invest, they're believers, but they don't do day trading. Then there are users who are, they're browsers, they discover, and every X number of weeks, but they're all advanced traders. They focus on all the innovation around derivatives and options, and they look at futures and margins and fun kind of products. But then there is a massive population of, let's call them the retail consumers, who are curious. They are believers. They are wanting to come in. They want their foot in the door, and they just want a very simple experience. They want it to be the most frictionless experience. They want brands that are trusted because they've heard so much, especially in the last 6 to 9 months. And they want to play around and then gradually go through the journey. So we do look at the landscape as folks who are just coming in. And in fact, for them, we strongly believe that NFT is an incredible evolution of crypto, or another manifestation of crypto. Then that maybe that becomes an entry point for a big population where, it is exciting for them, whether you want to call them the collectible avatars or just digital assets being minted on the chain.
Yeah, no, totally. I dabbled with NFTs. Bought a couple of NFTs for my kids, and spend more than a couple $100 on it. But it's a fascinating world. And so maybe we can talk about today and crypto. And I think certainly look, the tech markets have changed materially over the last 12, 13, 14 months now, as has crypto. So when you really when you talk about focusing on customer problems, and when you talk about where crypto is today, what are some of the top problems and opportunities that you've seen evolve with all the dynamics and the changes in the markets we've seen over the last year plus?
Yeah, look, I think we are still in the infancy and early stages of a lot of those happening at scale. But I'm an immigrant, and I have faced this challenge for the last 20 plus years that I've been here in the US. My family is still in India. Remittance is still a challenge, still takes me sometimes 2-3 days to get my money out there, or pull the money. Right now I'm in the process of selling, our ancestral property there and bringing the money back. It's not straightforward. You have to go through many hoops and challenges. And then I firmly believe that something like NFT will have many manifestations, in countries other than here. For example, authenticity and authentic documentation is a big challenge. Your birth certificates, that's a big vertical where there are massive areas of corruption across industries because you don't have authentic documentation, real estate, and a lot of challenges that exist in terms of registration. So authenticity and the ability to create an environment that is permissionless and trustless, I think has many use cases, and we are just starting to see how that shapes. So one of the other ones, because we recently bought a house when we moved to Florida, the way the lending platforms work and how you get a rate of interest for yourself versus somebody else, there is so much opportunity there. When I feel that smart contracts at scale could totally change that, where it can take the bias away from how the decisions are made today based on who you really know, within the institution, versus really having smart contracts that can determine based on input criteria, and it has a very predefined way of determining what value you get as an end user. So I feel that there is so much transparency that can come through the application. It can take away that middle layer bias. It can take away that, middle layer corruption and actually give the value back to the end user.
100%. And I think a lot of the contract opportunities are incredibly exciting. And by the way, I think they're also probably the less less known and less understood, especially across your average consumer. So maybe consider transition to our next topic and question, which is ultimately around personalization and data. And look, ultimately, I think the challenge here with education is one size doesn't necessarily fit all. Maybe we can sort of, there are a couple layers to this onion. The first is just, strategically and conceptually, how do you think about, for the problems of crypto, which, can generalize quite frankly to any other problem, how do you think about the actions that your customers take and how that can relate to the different points of advice, points of education that you can push from a branding and messaging perspective? And then, of course, the other side of this, which we'll get to afterwards, which is much more technical, is to actually talk about the blockchain as a vehicle of storing and representing customer data and what that can look like in the coming years and beyond.
Yeah. So to make sure I understood your first part of the question, of course, I'm excited about the second one. I've brainstormed that before on the evolution of blockchain. How does that tie into data storage and CDPs and then hook into marketing? Your first question was more around the points of education for customers.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'd imagine for, someone who has, $100,000 plus invested, in their Bitcoin wallet and they're trading every single day, they're at a very different point of their journey than for someone who, just funded with their $5 free, or I don't know what kind of incentives, Kraken has or doesn't have.
Yeah. Look, I think the good news is there is some incredible content out there, and which is now finally starting to talk about the basics and the fundamentals as well. I do feel that in the first few years, a lot of the conversation in the space, whether that is blockchain or crypto, which is just one application of the blockchain, it was quite insular, right? You had to be in the communities to really understand, and you had to understand the taxonomy. It wasn't very well understood. But there is a whole wave of content. There is podcasts, there is online content, there is content that brands like Kraken produce every week, trying to bring that basic level of understanding, the foundational level of understanding, and start to build those building blocks. And from a marketing and product standpoint, we are starting to invest in that very actively to seamlessly integrate that into the product experience as well. And there are folks who are trying to build gamification, trying to encourage and inspire users to want to learn more, and you're incentivizing that behavior. You're rewarding people to learn. So this concept of learn and earn, which again, for something as revolutionary, but also fairly complex and deep, creating experiences that inspire you to want to learn more without feeling the risk of investing your core assets. I think that is going to be the key to drive that global adoption. And also, like I said earlier, that from a marketing standpoint, the focus has to not lean on the inertia, not lean on the volatility, not make crypto only about get rich quick. Because when you bring a wave of users who come in for their volatility, who come in for that hockey stick growth in their investment, they are the ones who get disappointed and will leave the moment they see it tough. So instead, the focus should be first on education, on the value proposition of crypto. What is it? What is the true impact of this great revolution? So you come into it for reasons much beyond just that immediate or instant gratification.
Yeah, I mean, this is a lesson that I think every one of our listeners has experienced, and can benefit from, and really thinking about, what are the motivations and what is driving your ideal customers, and are they the right motivation? I know many of our e-commerce customers, they'll run sales and discounts over Black Friday, but those first customers, they won't really count as customers until they actually get to a second purchase, because it's an introduction to the brand, it's a cost of potentially acquiring customers, but it's getting someone to come at a deep discount isn't necessarily acquiring people for the right reasons at all. It doesn't mean it's a bad strategy, but it does mean that when you think about those customers, you sort of have to get them to do a little bit more before you can really count them in as part of the crew. So 100%.
Yes, very similar. I think it's very, very similar and akin to that example of throwing those carrots, in the world of e-commerce, or trying to bring someone on Thanksgiving. Yes, you see that initial spike, but that spike usually goes away if you're not focused on habit creation, if you're not focused on really building the trust, with your audience.
100%. So let's maybe turn to some of the technical aspects of the blockchain, and what this means potentially for customer data and beyond.
I think it's a space that we are all diving in and rapidly evolving, because I think there are a few different layers in terms of how it applies to the world of marketing. There is the data storage, and last 10, 15 years of marketing data has been all around. It began with the DMPs when the world was all about cookies and the anonymous data and translation of that. Then came the CDPs and great products like Simon Data, which kind of made first-party known data more accessible, more smart, more intelligent to build those connections. But I think with blockchain, I feel that in a world that is purely permissionless and trustless in a way, and anonymous, the power goes back to the customer. The core difference is the identity is no longer your own data set. The identity is no longer your address or your Google or whatever you as a brand was using. It is now your wallet. And all your interactions, at least the transactional interactions, are now on a public database, the world's database, which is my simplest way of defining what a blockchain really is. And what is yet to be figured out is at what point and how do brands tie that wallet identity and interactions that are stored on chain, which is limited because the chain is not meant to be a relational database ever, right? It is not feasible. But at what point does that get tied to your known data set as a brand? And I was having this great discussion with a lot of folks who are trying to solve that in the world of Web3. And I almost think about that as, when you are back in the day, 7, 8 years back, you started to have single sign-on. So you're trying to log into some place, and now you have, you can actually use your Gmail account to log in. So there is a point of connectivity which you as a customer own and control. And I feel that is going to be the pathway of allowing the customers to connect their wallets to their known entity if they choose to do so, And that opens up the world for brands to engage with those customers, leveraging their on-chain data, but also, their off-chain data as well. That's my very early thinking on how marketing automation, CDP, and known data evolves in the world of Web3.
It makes a ton of sense to me. And I think, what I think is most interesting, I think the salient point for our listeners is customer identity is, ultimately represents a combination of data that comes from many sources, online, offline, crypto, and beyond. And I think as far as it relates to crypto, the wallet is really sort of the key identifier that a user uses in the crypto space. So if I buy something, if I effect a transaction on Kraken, if I trade an NFT, all this is recorded in my wallet. And my wallet is not personally identifiable, but ultimately, it is my wallet. And of course, there are privacy questions, there are questions around technology as well that need to be ironed out. But it is a very interesting construct in that part of the beauty of your crypto wallet, is this notion of auditability and to really know what the lineage and what the transaction histories actually are, avoid things like fraud. It really, creates a much more open and transparent, ecosystem, and it comes with benefits around, data portability, and having that lineage. But ultimately, there are privacy questions as well around how it can ultimately or won't actually at all, join into your actual personal identity.
Yeah. And I think that what will be interesting, Jason, to see is as crypto becomes more and more ubiquitous and becomes the currency that gets accepted in more and more places, and a lot of e-com platforms start to use that, I think the shift will come because they will not care as much about who you really are as Jason, but they will care who you are, as that anonymous individual, and all they have is your wallet, but all they have is behavior. Where marketing will be more behavioral and intelligent, that's where ML and AI have even value, because it will not be about who you are, where you live, and everything else that we know about you today, but it'll be more about your transactions, your behavior on platform and off platform, and how do we leverage that to drive value back to you as an individual.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. You can imagine a CRM strategy that's driven just off of your wallet and off of absolutely no, personally identifiable information at all. As, to your point, it's driven off my behaviors, my transactions, but nothing else. It doesn't tie into where I live. It doesn't tie into any other sensitive information because it's completely decoupled from my actual identity.
Yes, and there are no boundaries to where that goes, because then it becomes interoperable, which means that you have access, you have the ability to tie your data, again, centering around the wallet for many different chains. And I think it's just so much potential, because right now your data is still restricted to an ecosystem that is controlled by one organization or one company.
Yep.
But the power of blockchain is that it is no longer limited to that scope, which means that at the end of the day, when brands leverage that data, I feel that we can amplify the value that you get back as a user, because you are not struggling with those boundaries that exist today.
Right. And just as the data is transparent, the computation and the analysis that are used to understand behaviors and intent from a CRM perspective can also be transparent. And especially we even touched on the compute model, around, Ethereum and other technologies that enable that. But it is a completely new and, quite frankly, very different world than exists today. Yes.
And I think that's why, as marketers, we all have to be on this learning curve and journey to understand. And if 10 years, I don't know how long back that was, 13, 14 years back, it was all about marketing tech. Every marketer needs to be a technologist. I think the next 10 years will redefine that at a whole different level, because technology and the channels through which you engage with your audiences, the type of data that we are going to deal with is going to be just so much more complex and amplified. We got a lot of catch up to do.
100%. All right, Mayur, we're coming to the bottom of the show here. In the last, since you were last on the episode, we've introduced a new question, which I prepped you on, but you have a ton of questions, a ton of time to think about. But here we go. If you could have this conversation again with anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
So, thanks for adding that fun question.
You're welcome.
There are a lot of incredible people, of course, but I would not. I'll stay the course and not try to get too philosophical. But in terms of entrepreneurship and disruption and revolution, there is one person that just, for me, is mind-boggling, and in terms of his ability and what he's done, purely in terms of what he's accomplished, and that's Elon Musk. And more so not because of what he's done with Tesla or anything else, but primarily for what he has shown as an entrepreneur, the resilience, especially with SpaceX. I know we were talking about that very briefly. That is just the inhuman ability to stay so focused at a mission where I'm sure he would have had a million opportunities to give up and still be revered very well as one of the entrepreneurs of the century. But for a mission that is so hard for us to even imagine, right? To inhabitate a whole different planet, but to have that commitment and the vision, to me, that is just unthinkable, unimaginable. But imagining somebody who could get so much passion and commitment and take a whole team behind and do something that was not done by brands and agencies like NASA for so many decades. It's just amazing. I feel if I have 1/1,000,000th of that resilience and persistence about whatever mission I have in life, I think I'll do well.
Yeah, no, it's a great response. And I think there's glimmer that the markets are turning to a better place. And I know crypto has certainly gone through its trials and tribulations over the last 15 months. But ultimately, I believe in the mission and the opportunity, and obviously, Mayur, it's incredibly obvious. I think you're underselling yourself a little bit here. That you 100% see the potential and push towards that every single day. And it's at the end of the day, it's tremendously exciting.
It is, yeah. We are very firm believers and very bullish on the future. And as Kraken, we'll continue to build great products, and we'll continue to do our best to move the mission ahead.
Great. Well, thank you again, Mayur, for coming on our podcast today and sharing your wisdom with us. Really, when I reflect back on our conversation, it's really a new world in many ways. It's a new way of storing data. It's a new set of problems around education and brand awareness and articulation of value. But at the same time, it's actually nothing new at all from a marketing perspective. It's really around starting with the basics and building a great product. Starting with an opportunity that's potentially massive, and really just looking at the fundamentals in front of us. Who are my customers? What are they doing? What's the data that describes them? And how do I use all that to influence and build the brand and to really drive customers into the life cycle to get them to realize as much value as possible. And while I'm sure for some of our listeners at times, the conversation may have felt a little bit out and to the right, I think bring it home. It's actually all pretty basic stuff at a certain level, at least from my sort of basic opinion. So Mayur, for anyone who wants to learn more about Kraken, or maybe for any listeners who might be looking for a role, how can they get in contact with you or learn more about the product?
Well, the best way is, I think crypto is very much like swimming. The only way you learn is when you just jump in. So I would encourage you to go to kraken.com, download our app, or check out some of our content on blog.kraken.com, as well as we have a career section on the .com. Please check out. We are continuing to bring on some great people. We have great opportunities, and we are remote first. We have employees in 70 different markets, countries. So it's one of the most exciting places to work, one of the most mission-driven organizations to be a part of. So yes, or you can always find me on LinkedIn or Twitter and hit me up if you are curious and want to learn more.
Great, and I can vouch, Mayur, for your passion for mission values. So, and thank you for everyone listening to this episode of the Data Unlocked podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Simon Data, please visit us on the web at simondata.com or email us at hello@simondata.